You're about to listen to the Dr. Dahlia Show. Sassy, stimulating talk radio. And now, here's Dr. Dahlia.
Doctor, tell me true. What's a heart like mine supposed to do?
All right, we are back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. 1-877 Dr. Dahlia, 1-877 DOCDALI. So I always liked Canada. I've been to Canada. Hey, there's been a lot of animosity with Canada lately, especially now with the wildfires. Interestingly, I didn't know we had any issue with Canada until I think it was 1999 when South Park did that Blame Canada. And in their South Park movie, which I saw while pregnant with my son, and I knew my son would come out loving South Park because I watched a lot of South Park in the 90s. And then when he was born in 2000, he's like, Terrence and Phillip are my favorite. And I didn't realize that there was an animosity between America and Canada. And there's a history with them. But for the most part, they've been our friendly neighbor. Well, now they're really sucking it to us with their wildfire smoke. And we are now getting fires in Minnesota. We have wildfire smoke blanketing New York, Wisconsin, Michigan, just all across the northeast U.S. and Midwest. And the air quality is really, really bad. And this is for a good part of America. Now, wildfires happen every year. This is the dry season. And we're watching California, of course, as California is dealing with their wildfire issues. But, over 100 wildfires are right now burning in Canada. And I hate to see that. Loving trees. Now, I just hate to see the beautiful oxygen producing, foliage, go to get destroyed, not to mention all the animals. And it's wildfires are just so tragic. But the wind is carrying the smoke. They're carrying embers. We now have multiple wildfires in northern Minnesota. So we have high levels of fine particulate matter that is affecting us. And so the air quality in Detroit, Minneapolis, Chicago have been ranked among the top 5 most polluted major cities in the world as of today. It's not that Minneapolis is the most polluted. It's a nice city. It's now, with the smoke, it's considered one of the most polluted, including Detroit and Chicago. So Minnesota officials and many other states are having people on high alert. Because of the smoke, they expect the smoke to still persist for days until Canada gets their fires under control. And I know people are pretty grumpy. People think Las Vegas just like the Canadians, and because the Canadians aren't coming. No, our issues with tourism is not Canada. It's that beers are $15 to $20. That's not. I still like Canada. Right? I like Canadians. So sue me. Yeah, but. This is making me a little grumpy. Okay, they need to get their act together and they need to do something quickly. Pennsylvania declared a code red air quality alert for today because of the wildfires causing unhealthy levels of pollution. So why are wildfires so bad? What are we looking at? Well, within a wildfire, you got carbon monoxide. You got carbon dioxide. Now remember, carbon monoxide is CO, whereas carbon dioxide is CO2. Carbon monoxide looks like oxygen in the body. So if you are breathing carbon monoxide, it is going to compete with oxygen. And it's pretty wily, and it sometimes can outcompete oxygen. And so what ends up happening is you feel tired. You feel like you're getting less oxygen. Your body doesn't work at its highest capacity. So wildfire smoke, even if you aren't even worried about the pollution and you're thinking, I got HEPA filters and I'm good, the carbon monoxide is a concern. So make sure, sorry about my eyes, make sure you have carbon monoxide monitors in your house, in your home. Wood particles, there's formaldehyde that comes with these wildfires. Acrolein is used as a pesticide, but also acrolein is also carcinogenic, as is benzene. The plastics, when there's wildfires, there's resins and plastics and other stuff that get up in flames, and in the even if houses and buildings don't burn, there's still a bunch of other aspects that get caught up in that. So you breathe that. According to the EPA, let me read this with my glasses, especially since my eyelashes bother me. They say smoke is composed primarily of carbon dioxide, water vapor, carbon monoxide, particulate matter, hydrocarbons, and other organic chemicals, nitrogen oxides, trace materials, and several thousand other compounds. The actual composition of smoke depends on the fuel type, the temperature of the fire, and the wind conditions. And that's another thing people forget about, that the heat that emits causes chemical reactions. So let's say you just cleaned your house, or the dog farted and you sprayed some Lysol. The heat, the change in heat could also affect, or the new chemicals could mix. So chemical reactions, might not always be seen and visualized, but they could be happening under your nose, which you're hopefully holding because the dog just farted. My dog did today, and I still feel like it's in my hair. Different types of wood and vegetation are composed of varying amounts of cellulose, according to EPA, lignin, tannins, other polyphenolics, oils, fats, resins, waxes, starches, which produce other compounds when burned. So for people that are exposed to this, they might cough, they might wheeze, they might have difficulty breathing, they might get chest pain, they might get a lot more mucus production, they might get dizzy, lightheaded, fatigue, they might feel their heart race. Because again, if you're low on oxygen or you're not getting the proper oxygen, your heart is going to try to increase its cardiac output. This could exacerbate any lung diseases people have, like COPD, asthma, etc. It could exacerbate your heart conditions. It could also increase susceptibility to flu, COVID, things like that. There was a study out of Reno, Nevada, looking at how when the COVID outbreak happened, there was also wildfire smoke hitting us that summer. And they found an uptick by 17.7% of cases because viruses, I guess, take advantage. So how to protect against the wildfire smoke? Well, one, get out of Dodge if you can. All right, have clean air filters, cleaner air spaces. Clean out those air filters up in the ceiling. Use a portable air cleaner if you have one. Don't leave these unattended. Make sure you also don't have generators and carbon monoxide producing things adding to the harm. Masks, N95 masks, I think work pretty well if you're in an area where you're like, I can't go outside. I was watching a news segment where you're looking at Cleveland, and it's just hazy in the city, and it's just and how do people breathe in this? So what we worry about are these PM 2.5s. These PM 2.5s are little particles that are less than 2.5 micrometers in diameter, and they're present in pollution and wildfire smoke. But what really stinks about these 2.5 micrometer pollutants is they could get deep into the lungs. Larger particles like 10 nanometers or the PM10s, they could also impair lung function, but they aren't as wily as these PM 2.5s. So be aware, watch your kids, your elderly, your animals, those with lung disease, you might want to get out of Dodge, those with diabetes, smokers, pregnant women, and again, your pets, 1-877 Doc Dolly, don't go away.
Have you ever thought you'd like to buy and sell houses but didn't know how or where to get the money? My name is Ron LeGrand, and over the past 40 years, I've bought over 3,000 houses without using my money or credit and taught thousands to do the same. Today, even in a virtual environment, we buy nice houses in nice neighborhoods using no banks, realtors, contractors, or other costly entanglements, and build huge cash flow and wealth without the hassle of tenants, all without credit and little or no money. You don't need a license or experience, and I'll show you exactly how it's done. Text FREE to 99-799, and I'll send you my free training. I promise you I'll change the way you think about real estate and open the door to a new lifestyle that doesn't involve risk or rehabs and can quickly replace your current income. Text FREE to 99-799, and let me show you how to take your life back and build cash flow and wealth from your home. That's FREE to 99-799. Again, FREE to 99-799.
Hi, it's Mark Falter, host of the Financial Fitness Show. I strongly believe that no one should ever pay 1 penny more in taxes than they are legally obligated. Unfortunately, for most hardworking Americans, this just isn't the case. Why? Because most people spend more time planning next weekend's getaway than trying to ensure they're going to pay less in taxes. My financial fitness team has put together some materials that I know are going to help you. It's the Tax Savings Kit. Tax Savings Kit includes 3 things: free tax analysis, top 10 ways to pay less in taxes, and an investor's guide to taxes. Now, how do you get it? Simple. 866-764-2635. Again, 866-764-2635. I'm Mark Falter. This is Financial Fitness, making personal finance profitable.
back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer. And big thanks to y'all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Dahlia, Facebook, The Dr. Dahlia Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So when I was pregnant, I was really worried about how my productivity would be perceived. And what I did, I've had 2 children. Didn't have more because I was so worried about any more health implications that could happen because I was going to be over 30 years old by the time I had my 3rd. And doctors, just because they're always on their feet and working, have oligohydramnios, low fluid, more at risk for complications because just doctors just do. I think it's because we're exposed to viruses and we just, don't take care of ourselves like we take care of our patients, and we're always on the run. But I was in residency when I planned this. I planned to get pregnant between my 2nd and 3rd year residency. I had organized with my residency director that I would do all my heavy work up until the time I delivered the baby, so that after I had the baby, I would have my electives and my easier rotations. And I did that because I was only going to be able to get 2 weeks off. If I wanted more, they would have given me unpaid leave, but it would have put off my graduation from residency. And so I didn't want to take that chance. So what I did was all the deliveries I had to do, all the heavy rotations I had to do, boards, whatever, I did while I was pregnant. And I worked up until the last day when I had to start being induced to go into labor. My labor lasted 5 days. It was horrible. And then I had the baby. 2 weeks later, came back, was able to do, some half days, bring baby to work, breastfeed baby. And I was very, very fortunate that my job was so accommodating. But my productivity changed. Of course it changed. I have a baby. I have other priorities. I'm not able to see as many patients. Prior to being pregnant, even while pregnant, I was seeing 60 patients in a 12-hour period at the ER, at urgent cares. I mean, I was a beast. Even pregnant. Now that I have a baby and I got to stop and nurse, so my productivity went down. Well, I did what I could to compensate for that. And I did a good job because I got most of the heavy work done. And I was still there and I was still at work, etc. Well, things have changed a little bit since the 90s because they don't want women or men who have a new baby at home to have to be split with their attention and their productivity, the top priority. They want them to be able to enjoy parenthood. However, it could be at a cost to the employer, could be at a cost to the business. And what's been happening are these AI systems that are now being used for the labor pool and human resources are identifying which employees are the least productive. So when an employer wants to fire somebody, rather than them having to personally, which is so difficult, when I've had to fire, staff, it was not easy. But if they screwed up I always was really, really nice and offered them their job in the future. I had to fire somebody who had claimed she did X, Y, and Z, had worked for these companies. And I had called the company when I checked her reference saying, what do you think of this employee? They're like, she is fantastic. Hire her. Well, it's because they wanted to get her off the unemployment. So calling references didn't help one bit because everybody's like, oh yeah, hire her. Well, it turned out she had horrible experience. She stunk. And how I fired her though is I said, look, I think you have amazing potential. This type of clinic is a little bit more varsity. Now, I mean, in terms of, we kind of operated like an urgent care, like a mini ER, we do x-ray, I sew people up. So I think, with you with a little bit more experience, you will be awesome here in the future. So please reach out. And we did rehire people. It wasn't a lie. I did rehire people once they got more experience. But this person stunk. And I couldn't, I couldn't have my patients suffer as a result of her not, doing blood pressures appropriately. or knowing how to run a urine test. I don't know how the hell she lasted that long in medicine. I don't think we ever rehired her. But but it's so hard to fire somebody, but I tried to do it as nice as possible. And then eventually I just had my husband do it because it was just so emotionally, trying. It's difficult. You don't want to fire people. So what companies are doing is they're going to their AI, having their AI do it. In fact, people are just getting texts or they're getting emails. They don't even have that face-to-face, I got to let you go. But the problem that some of these employees are seeing and employers are seeing is that the AI isn't woke. It's not DEI. It doesn't consider all the ADA and pregnancy protections. So AI is identifying the least productive workers and firing them. As a result, Meta is getting sued. We're being told that 26 Meta workers are claiming that the AI systems that use, monitoring and algorithmic ratings are disproportionately targeting employees on family leave, parental leave, and medical leave. So the plaintiffs include workers on pregnancy, parental, and caregiving leave because they're being nailed from the AI system for their performance scores and their reduced output. So they're suing the company. 8,000 employees, I believe, work for Meta. 10% of its workforce, I think Meta said they were going to have to fire. In an internal memo to employees in April, the company said the cuts would be aimed at making the company more efficient and offsetting its other investments. Well, if you're paying for somebody to be at home, the AI is going to identify that as a financial liability. So the lawsuit was filed this week in federal court in Oakland, California, claims the company used internal AI systems, keystroke and activity monitoring data, AI token usage dashboards, and algorithmically assisted performance rankings, among other methods. And they said that they, by design, cannot be accumulated by an employee who is on protected medical or family leave, or whose output is reduced by a disability. Now, this is very easy to fix in the algorithm. This is very easy to fix, where if that box is checked, they don't get fired. They have FMLA or they pregnant. So there is a way to fix this. But this underscores an issue where the AI who is trying to, in fact, the AI might have even taken that into account and said the money we're losing, paying for parental leave, paying for people being off, all this PTO is less than a lawsuit. So take the lawsuit. I mean, I'm not saying that's what happened, but, your medical or family leave that is supposed to protect you might not protect you in the future. Now, we do have laws. We have, the Americans Disabilities Act, the Family and Medical Leave Act, or FMLA, the Pregnancy Discrimination Act. We have laws that protect you for now. But if AI starts to get the priority that it does, they're going to look at, where these companies are bleeding money. Each of the 26 anonymous employees in the lawsuit took protective leave and requested or received a reasonable accommodation for disability. They've been notified of their layoffs, but currently they still are employed by Meta. Separations are supposed to start by next week. They say many of the employees in the lawsuit took pregnancy or parental leave, during which time they couldn't work. So their measured output on the whole looked bad. The medical leave also targeted them. So this is where it gets a little tricky, because we have these laws and we're trying to help individuals who do need to take. We don't want people losing their job as soon as they had a baby. We don't want that to happen. But on the other end, these companies are hemorrhaging money. Meta's making money. I don't cry a river for Meta. But all these other companies, especially small businesses, that are looking at things going, I gotta make things efficient. The number one thing that employers are looking to AI for is to save money. and become more efficient, which means anybody that is getting accommodations or taking more time off or not having as much productivity is going to have a target on their back. And so, will the AI retrain, or will it override itself, saying, okay, guys, this isn't making sense. You're paying for somebody now to be off. In fact, there was somebody who was bragging how they basically got almost a year's worth of paid leave based on all the little smart ways for them to, the AI is not going to put up with that. And as I said, AI might even figure out that the lawsuit may be less costly than keeping the employees. So we got to figure out what we're going to do. 1-877-Doc-Dolly.
Looking for a gift that can actually help secure someone's future? It's Mark Falter's new book, Common Sense Income Strategies. It makes the perfect gift for that special someone in your life. Mark has helped thousands of hardworking Americans secure their financial future by using time-tested strategies that continue to create wealth, whether the market is up or down. Strategies that will make perfect sense once you take the time to read this powerful book. Common Sense Income Strategies brings to you what Mark has been teaching in person and talking about on the radio for decades. You've worked too long and too hard not to see the fruits of your labor. To learn how to receive your free copy, call 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635. Secure your future with Common Sense Income Strategies by Mark Falter. Again, to learn how to receive your free copy, call 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635.
All right. We are back on the Dr. Dahlia Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-Doc-Dolly, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So making huge headlines, don't ask why, we got enough to worry about, is Chuck Schumer allegedly passing a lot of gas while he was ripping on Trump. So he ripped, I guess, some gas while ripping on Trump. I don't think he did. The sound almost actually sounds like it comes from away from him. So I think it was somebody in the chamber. However, he's the one with the microphone. So as he's speaking, you hear it. It's hard to hear, so we don't have the audio. I personally, I think there's like bigger fish to fry. But one thing that I have gotten myself caught into, the good news about something like that is for those of us worried about passing gas on the Senate floor, apparently, if it does happen, and it was Chuck Schumer's fart, then that means none of us are going to be disqualified from being a senator, which means I have definitely now nothing stopping me from running for office. So that's good to know that there's that flexibility. But while he was discussing the Iran and National Defense Authorization Act, flatulent noise, there you don't hear anybody giggle. You don't hear anybody laugh. I don't really see him. Like I said, I really don't think it was him. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody added that sound. But what I do notice a lot of people struggle with are bowel sounds. And I have a lot of stomach gurgling. And it doesn't sound, really pretty. It's like, it doesn't sound like, but it's, and it makes it sound, it's a grumble. And that's really it's hard to hide. And I just think we here we are in 2026, and we still look at farts as funny. We still make fun of people who fart. Why do we care? Who cares if somebody farts? I mean, why is it the biggest deal? I don't understand. You would think. I mean, in the olden days, did they make fun of that? I don't think they did, because everybody burped, everybody farted. That's just what I remember when I was younger, I had finished a meal, and I had burped, and I go, sorry, and my father says, actually, in some Arab cultures and Middle Eastern cultures, a burp is a compliment that, the food was good and that you ate a lot. And I was like, really? And I don't know if, I ever, investigated that to see if my dad was joking or not, but I've heard that where burp is used to be, or in some cultures, a sign of you actually complimenting the meal. A fart, that's something different. That suggests you're having some food intolerance, even though farts are normal because you need to be able to move your stool. I would not do that at the dinner table as a form of a compliment. But it's funny that here we are in 2026, where something like that hijacks the news cycle, and you just see headline after headline about a fart that either did or did not happen or sounded like, and it's like, really, people, grow up here. Now, we are, though, very farty in the midst of this cyclosporiasis outbreak, and many people are a little nervous about what their farts smell like. And so, millions of farts are assaulting the atmosphere of homes and elevators on a daily basis. And there's ways to mitigate some of the smell of it. So if you guys are eating big meals or only eating once a day, if you eat smaller meals, that could make them a little less stinky. Why do they get stinky? Well, because they have the ability for the sulfur to build up and the other components to build up. So if you pass it more frequently, don't hold it in, it will be less stinky. If you increase your fluid intake and you're less constipated, if you stool regularly, if you minimize dairy, if you avoid alcohol, that can make it less stinky. If you address some of your food intolerances and if needed, use digestive enzymes. So if you're lactose intolerant, you might need to use Lactaid or avoid some of those cheese. If you can't tolerate onions or beans, you could use Beano. Probiotics could sometimes change the melodious air. Exercising daily, avoiding constipation. Very interestingly, there was a study finding that Pepto-Bismol makes your farts smell less. The bismuth salicylate minimizes smell because it coats the stomach, minimizes microbe growth. The problem is you're not supposed to be taking that on a regular basis. So, the Pepto-Bismol is only supposed to be for a very short time if your medical provider says to use it. But, yeah. So, flatus, or a fart, is made up of multiple gases. We swallow the gas when we talk and eat, and there's also microbes lining the intestine that make it. You got your hydrogen, your nitrogen, your oxygen, your carbon dioxide, and methane. But the odor is from the sulfur gas components. And the sulfur doesn't compose a whole lot of it. It's a smaller amount. But there are sulfur gas components, including hydrogen sulfide, dimethyl sulfide, and others. According to the National Health Services in England, an average person farts 5 to 15 times a day. Now, every now and then we have another headline that'll say airplanes had to evacuate and had to be grounded because of somebody's fart. So, do other people's farts make you sick? I might get nauseated. I might say, okay, I cannot be in this elevator any longer. Dude, what did you just do? That's pretty bad. But, they can technically, there is the science behind it where it can make you sick. Why? Well, when you do expel gas, there are bacteria that come with it. And they have used Petri dishes where they put a Petri dish next to the person's butt and then was able to grow bacteria from that fart. But your clothes do provide a filter. Another rumor or a myth is that you could get pink eye by somebody farting on your pillowcase. Apparently this was something really big to do in the 70s and 80s. People would do that. It is possible, but it's anecdotal. I don't think we have a lot of studies on that. However, the smells, because of the hydrogen sulfide, can cause nausea, can cause headaches, can cause skin and eye irritation. So when somebody said, oh my gosh, my husband's fart was so bad I cried, they're not lying. You can tear from it. The hydrogen sulfide gives that characteristic rotten egg odor. And in toxic doses, if there's a lot of hydrogen sulfide could cause convulsions, delirium, and death. But because hydrogen sulfide is in such a small, minute amount, most likely you will not convulse due to that. But if somebody puts you in a chamber and doesn't allow you to leave, and that's all you're breathing in, I suppose there is a potential for you to get pretty sick. So why? What was the evolutionary reason for that? Well, you do need to expel anything that goes in has to come out. So fluids that come in eventually have to come out. Food that comes in eventually has to come out. Air that comes in eventually has to come out. But also, our bodies are smart. God's smart, nature's smart, whatever you believe in. And in order for things to move, the physics of air helps things move. And so you have peristalsis activity in the esophagus, bringing food to where it needs to go in the stomach. But with the rest of the intestine, you don't necessarily have, like a flagella or things moving. You do have some cilia and things like that, brush border to absorb nutrients, but you don't necessarily have a propulsive sort of mechanism. And that's what the air does. That's what the gas does. So in order for you to get from point A to point B, or we should probably say point B to then point F, for fart, because point A to B is your esophagus to your stomach, and that you have peristalsis. The smooth muscle pushes it. There needs to be air that helps allow things to move. And so, interestingly also, there was a 2014 study from Exeter University that said hydrogen sulfide and gas help cells recover from mitochondrial damage, allowing their energy powerhouses to keep working. Now, that doesn't mean to hold your farts in, okay? Just get them out when you need to. But if you have a lot of pain, you're having more, you're losing your stool, get yourself checked out. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY.
Hey guys, it's Clyde. We've had a lot of requests for Ground Zero merchandise, so we put together an online store with a big variety of high-quality items. I'm really excited to let you know about these things. We have a lot to offer you and your loved ones. In addition to our regular apparel, such as t-shirts, beanies, hoodies, and hats, we've expanded our product line with posters, flags, aprons, mugs, and a whole lot more. We also have Ground Zero collectibles, along with a limited edition of items like a Clyde Lewis canvas portrait, a Ground Zero embroidered jacket that will certainly make for great gifts and for interesting conversations with family and friends. And we now offer publications such as Ron Patton's book about mind control, MK Zine, and back copies of the official magazine of Ground Zero while it was in print. Paranoia, the Conspiracy Reader, also coming in 2023, are updated and revised books that I've written. There's a secure and easy-to-use shopping cart for your purchases. So shop today at our official store by going to groundzeromerch.com. Again, that's groundzeromerch.com.
Dr. Dahlia here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
We are back on the Dr. Dahlia Show, 1-877-DOC-DOLLY, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So, no reason to hide it. I am a huge, huge fan of Marco Rubio. I always have been. Met him, really, really nice guy and smart guy. Actually, went to school in Las Vegas, Nevada, as a child. And the Secretary of State did a fantastic speech today. Urging more than 60 countries who gathered in Washington to look at and help stop this violent far-left political terrorism. And he wants them to treat this threat as a global counterterrorism priority. He spoke to, I believe, 65 different foreign delegations, and he said governments are overlooking, and they've been doing this too long, what he has described as a resurgence of transnational far-left extremist violence, has called for greater international cooperation to counter it. According to Fox News, Rubio described radical leftism as a, quote, poisonous resentment cloaked in the language of equality and justice. He says, today we face a new wave of this old evil here in the United States. The share of left-wing terrorist attacks and plots have risen to levels not seen in decades. So Rubio said the administration is rebuilding under President Trump the U.S. counterterrorism strategy around what it views as an increasingly transnational threat, adding that additional force terrorist organization designations are forthcoming after the State Department designated 4 foreign far-left groups as terrorist organizations in November of 2025. He says that these far-left extremist networks coordinate across borders by sharing training materials, encrypted communications, financing, and safe houses while working alongside hostile foreign states. He argued that the U.S. and its allies must respond by expanding intelligence sharing, law enforcement cooperation, and efforts to disrupt terrorist financing. He says, you are here because this is real, and it is getting worse, and it can no longer be denied, and it can no longer be ignored. It is time to crush this evil forever. It's time for people the civilized world to defend themselves. So what's really interesting is he had accused the media organizations, universities, and other legacy institutions of minimizing the left-wing violence. And you saw examples of this with the Hamas attack in Israel. Hamas comes over the border, doesn't go after the military. They go after a peace concert. Just Israelis dancing around unarmed for peace. And they go after a kibbutz where they farm. And their weapons are locked up because they never need their weapons because they're a kibbutz. They're a farming community. And what did the media do? And what did colleges do? They looked at it as, oh, well, this is a response to genocide. What genocide? What are you talking about? Hamas is running Gaza. The genocide in Iran? What are you talking about, genocide? Makes no sense. And then, Marco Rubio brings up George Floyd. George Floyd sadly died during an arrest. And he suffered a medical incident where he started to say, I can't breathe, when they were trying to put him in the cop car. He kicks himself out of the cop car, screaming he can't breathe. Somebody calls an ambulance. So an ambulance is on the way, but for I don't know why, they put him prone on his stomach, knee to the neck, and unfortunately he ends up succumbing to the medical issue. And he dies. As a result, the George Floyd protests, which, again, could have been peaceful. Martin Luther King taught us so much about how to do effective protesting. Unfortunately, as Marco Rubio brought up, it went to people looting, burning things on fire. That's not, that doesn't make your case. That's terrorism. To go and we had Shay Michelnanis, if I'm pronouncing his name right, a police officer, young police officer in Las Vegas, shot in the head because of what happened with George Floyd in Minneapolis, thousands of miles away. That's terrorism. That's not peaceful protest. Yet the media minimizes it. And he said some local officials in cities refuse to prosecute people who committed violence and destruction. He says you will no doubt see the dogma rear its head in the coverage of this very conference. It's a conference that they held. He said, in spite of the clear and undeniable reality, in spite of the objective numbers and statistics, in spite of the fact that in this room today there are representatives from across the political spectrum, we will hear that this kind of organized violence and terror will be dismissed. In fact, in England, one of their politicians was just killed in what they believe was a targeted attack. And this is, I guess, the third one in a decade of British politicians being killed. Now, I believe they did catch the suspect. I think it was a 28-year-old, and we don't know too much information on the suspect, but very, very frightening that Ann Whitcomb, David Ames, Joe Cox, these are lawmakers who ended up being slain. Why? Because of their involvement in politics. So it's not just in America where we're seeing this. The ICE organized protests. If you want to peacefully assemble, I support you with that. I think peaceful assemblies are fantastic. But what I saw, during the just throughout the last few years, was they would stop cars and start harassing them. And then people in cars would hold up signs showing, "I'm with you." Okay, Black Lives Matter. What happened to George Floyd was bad, whatever. And they did that to protect themselves, because you saw in Phoenix, you saw in California, LA, you saw where people would be thrown out of their car and attacked. So if your traffic is stopped, if you don't look like you are on the side of this quote unquote peaceful assembly, you'll get attacked, thrown out of your car, beat up. So it's fearful. ICE agents, I don't go up to an armed ICE agent. Go to the area where there's peaceful protest. But no, they're trained. There's funding. There's and this is, it's unfortunate because political activism is a career for people, and it's a passion for people. But there's ways to be an activist, like Rosa Parks, that doesn't involve death, that doesn't involve somebody getting run over, somebody getting shot, somebody getting arrested. There's ways to do it. And so seeing Marco Rubio call it like it is, and saying, the whole industry grew up in our countries around the study of extremism. We have think tanks and fellowships and journals and consultancies with the unspoken understanding around them that only one kind of political violence was a true threat to the system. So left-sided terrorist attacks and domestic terrorism gets ignored. Not cool. There should be no right, left, none of this should be okay. Doing peaceful protest at Congress because you didn't like how mail-in ballots happened, that's protected by the Constitution. Breaking windows and rioting, no, that's not protected. I mean, but this is what people, you think people want the peace. People want to follow the Constitution. People want no. And I've said this time and time again, people want war. Look at the Tyler Robinson alleged Charlie Kirk shooter. He knew what he was doing. Look at the Luigi Mangione alleged shooting of the United CEO. I mean, these people want a revolution, and they want to be in the news, and they want to be in history books. And so we're not going to see the stop until there's a global stand against it. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY.
Looking for an easy read that can actually help secure someone's future? Pick up a copy of Mark Falter's book, Common Sense Income Strategies. For the past 30-plus years, Mark has helped thousands of hardworking Americans secure their financial future by using strategies that continue to create wealth, whether the market is up or down. Strategies that will make perfect sense once you take the time to read this powerful book. Common Sense Income Strategies brings to you what Mark has been teaching in person and talking about on the radio for decades. It's not rocket science, it's a pretty easy read. You've worked too long and too hard not to see the fruits of your labor. Common Sense Income Strategies is available now on Amazon or by calling 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635. Common Sense Income Strategies by Financial Fitness Show host Mark Falter. Secure your financial future today.